Hi, students. These notes are for macromolecules. It has two sections to it. This is the first section of the notes, which is really on the front side of your paper. All right, so to start us off with, what is a macromolecule? Well, macromolecules are organic molecules. And so what is organic? Any molecule that contains carbon. Macromolecules are polymers. Poly means many, mer means part. So these molecules that we're going to be talking about are made up of many parts, and those parts are called monomers. The first macromolecule we'll look at is carbohydrates. And so here's a simple disaccharide. Di means two. So I could add more onto there, and you can see how they're kind of connected. There's an oxygen between one sugar and another sugar. So sugars are carbohydrates. And so the monomer of most carbohydrates is going to have glucose in it. And so there's other types of sugars as well, but glucose is going to be the primary one. And so a polymer of glucose, poly means many, so many glucose put together, you can make starch, and starch is a macromolecule that you find in plants. For living cells that are animal cells, it's the preferred energy source, and most plant cells as well. It's the preferred energy source. They use glucose to obtain energy. For us animals, it's the glucose is a fast source of energy. So if you are a runner, eating sugars right before a short run, like a 100-meter dash or something, would be okay to do because you're running a short distance. But if you're running a marathon, you wouldn't want to load yourself on carbohydrates. So it is a fast source of energy. Foods that you would eat to get that would be fruits, rice, bread, any kind of sugar, candies, ice cream, things like that, sodas. But, the sugars that are in the kind of the junk foods, ice cream, candy, soda, that's not really a good source of carbohydrate. So carbohydrates are an important part of our diet, but you shouldn't be getting them from the junk foods. All right, another name for lipid is fat. And so the monomers of a lipid are glycerol. You can see here in this blue part, you can see the key down below. This blue part is the glycerol, 3 carbons. Okay, and attached to each one of those carbons is a fatty acid chain. Now, the first 2 fatty acids are saturated, meaning they have all single bonds with carbon. But the one on the bottom has this double bond, and that's an unsaturated fat. So saturated fats are things like butter, lard, and unsaturated fats would be things like oils. So lipids are a great way to store energy for long term. That's why some of us do have some fat. And so that purpose of that fat is energy storage. It doesn't matter if your body is really extremely overweight or just a little bit overweight. Your body will not basically get rid of a useful molecule. It will take all the extra glucose and store it as fat. And so your body, if you ever need to lose weight, you're not going to ever lose weight until you stop eating the sugar because your body will always store it as fat. One of the main functions of lipids is it's the boundary of all cells. So every single one of us are made up of trillions of cells. Each boundary is made up of that phospholipid bilayer. It's made up of lipids. So one of the purposes of that lipid is insulation. Foods are oils, butter, lard, but typically, again, you want to look for the liquid forms. Those liquid oils are unsaturated, healthier, but there's some that are healthier than others, like olive oil and avocado oil are healthier than canola oil or peanut oil and such. All right, next macromolecule is proteins. Proteins are made up of an amino acid, a monomer called amino acid, sorry. The monomer is an amino acid. There are 23 amino acids, and most of those we get in your diet, but some of them our body has to make. This R doesn't represent an atom. It represents anything that can go there. There's other different types of things that can go there. A hydrogen can go there. An OH group can go there. A CH3 can go there. So other molecules are attached to there to make up those 23 amino acids. What's the function of proteins? Well, it's really what makes up most of our body. Our body is made up of different types of proteins that make up the body tissues. Besides body tissues, we have enzymes that we're going to learn about in this unit. So the enzymes in our mouth that digest food, the enzymes in our stomach and small intestine that are helping digest food. And so foods that we eat to get the proteins would be any kind of meat, nuts, beans, and eggs. Beans is probably one of the healthiest sources of that. Nuts are healthy, but again, a lot of times nuts have salt and other things on there that makes them unhealthy. Meat, the best meat to eat would be fish. It has the best source of a protein. And a lot of times what we do is we eat meat to get the protein, but we cook the meat in a way that makes it unhealthy, like fried chicken. And eating too much red meat might be not as good for you as well. All right, the last macromolecule is nucleic acids. The monomer of a nucleic acid is structure here called a nucleotide. Its function is to store genetic information. Two examples you're probably familiar with is DNA and RNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and R similar ribonucleic acid. And basically, you can find DNA and RNA in any type of food that comes from a living thing. And so, as long as it hasn't gone through too much processing, you would find DNA intact. Okay, so that's it for the notes for this part. The rest of the notes for the backside of this would be a separate video.